Hello, Yakri here with another Dominions 5 video. So this time I'm going to talk about Kaliasa because I saw someone mention something about wanting to see a Kaliasa playtest, and it made me think about whether or not Kaliasa is actually a viable nation in Dominions 5, because they weren't really a viable nation in Dominions 4. They were too weak to archers, and correcting that weakness was so resource intensive that it made them kind of impractical. Now, in New Dominions, in Dominions 5, they should be weaker, you'd think, because sacreds are weaker in Dominions 5, and this is a nation that actually revolves around their sacreds quite a bit. However, the fact that you can get, there's certain blesses you can get that are at a lower price point than similar advantages would have been in Dominions 4, means that you can actually, I think, get a reasonable amount of, advantage coming over to Dominions 5. And I think they're actually possibly a fairly viable nation in Dominions 5, whereas they weren't in Dominions 4. And so let's look at their troop line before I go into what exactly has changed with bless options that I think gives them an advantage. So they've got Makarta archers, Atavi infantry, Bandar light archers, and Bandar warriors, and the Bandar swordsmen. And these are their like crappy non-sacred infantry. They're all pretty bad. And if you've seen my video on early age of Lanka, you'll be familiar with some of these because this is another monkey nation, and Lanka is a monkey nation as well. The Bandar swordsmen are sort of decent, right? They've got 18 hit points for 19 gold. It's not too bad, especially with 10 protection in the early age. That's not for survival. They're an animal though, and bodyguard isn't actually useful. It's like a cost inflating bonus, right? That is not useful except when they're actually acting as a bodyguard. So not something I'm a fan of having on them, but they still do 23 damage, as well as having like a shield and 10 protection. Of course, they're not wearing hats, so they're still pretty crappy. And then, of course, the Atavi infantry have no protection. They're cheap, and that's about the only good thing that can be said of them. I guess stealthy is pretty okay, but other than that, not great. Light Bandar archers are, well, they're cheap, powerful longbows, so that's nice. But of course, they're not going to win archery battles without buffs from mages because they only have 3 protection. And, their precision is not very good at all. 9, 10 being the, like, average. And of course, Atavi archers, a little bit better precision, but they only have short bows with 9 damage. Their stat line is still terrible overall. And the Makarta are really just total trash chaff troops, right? 5 gold, 5 hit points. Sometimes you do want massed units, but unless this is one of those times, you shouldn't bother recruiting these guys, right? And this nation does not have access to fire magic except they're pretenders, so flaming arrows with their actually these guys don't have it. The Makarta have sticks and stones, not really viable. So yeah, these guys, you want to almost completely ignore their entire infantry line. Probably you're going to pay attention to the Atavi infantry and the light Bandar archers, and you're going to mix and match them, and maybe you'll recruit some Bandar swordsmen, right? For the most part. Instead, you're going to be recruiting the Guyaka, which are sacred magic beings, which makes them awkward to command, but they're pretty good with a little bit of buffing. So they have all 1, which means that units have to make a morale check to attack them in melee, which is very good. They have 2 attacks, also very good for a sacred, especially when they have 15 strength, so their attacks do pretty solid damage, and they have a slightly above average stat line for combat, right? The disadvantage is that they have no armor and have only 1 protection, so like an arrow from one of those light Bandar archers would do more than half of their health and damage and might kill them on a good roll. Okay, so really terrible. And because they're magic beings, you have a harder time leading them around, and they're susceptible to extra magical spells that are bad for them, that they wouldn't be if they weren't magical beings. Like magical being, demon, and that kind of thing, it's always a penalty, right? Although it usually comes on unusually powerful units. So, it's not unwarranted, generally speaking. So these guys are recruit anywhere, so these are what you're going to recruit for the most part. And then you've got your Yavanna are what you're going to get from your capital. They're basically the same dudes, both a little bit better stats overall, a little bit more, I think they're more expensive, right? Yes, more expensive. And they have a shield, which is actually a big deal for these guys because they're butt naked. That's going to allow them to actually block a little bit more damage. But they still have the same problem. They only have protection 1. They're going to get their ass handed to them by archers because this awe ability makes them actually fairly durable in melee. But versus archers, they're going to die in 1 or 2 hits, which is just not a great situation to be in. Heaven forbid someone actually use like flaming arrows or something. You're just going to get obliterated. Your archers are capital only, which means you're not going to recruit them at all, which is unfortunate. I really wish they would make these recruit anywhere, because then it would be a more interesting nation. But you're gonna just ignore these guys. They're garbage, unfortunately. So let's see. For your commander line, you've got Makarta Scouts. I mean, they're actually pretty good. If you ever want to take the time to recruit scouts from I think you have to recruit them from a fort. Makarta Scouts are only 20 gold, which is, much cheaper than a normal scout. And actually, they have forest survival. Actually, wait, do scouts have that too? I think they do, actually. Never mind. But yeah, so it's pretty nice. The Tabby Chieftains are also pretty handy, though, because these guys can be foreign recruited on forests, I believe. And they're stealthy as well, and have forest survival, so you can recruit them as scouts also. But without spending a fort turn on it. Bandar commanders, you will not be using these actually very much, unlike a lot of other nations now with the new command points in Dominions 5, because they can't lead magic units, and like I said, you're going to largely be ignoring these guys. Now, of course, their AD leadership, you might recruit like 2 of them and then use them to fill up a bunch of chaff, right? Like maybe a tactic you could use would be you would recruit like 160 Makarta, right? And put them under the leadership of 2 Bandar commanders right at the front of your army, right? And the idea would be the enemy mages would cast spells and they would hit the Makarta, right? Okay. Of course, it's very easy to clear these guys out with spells as well, and the enemy troops will go through them like a hot knife through butter, but you can still use it to kind of slow down the enemy army, so it's a nice tool to have. Not to mention later in the game, if you actually buff these guys, they can be pretty gnarly. Like if you cast mass protection, that'll put these guys at 10 protection instead of 0, which makes their 5 hit points something that they might not lose in 1 hit, which is a lot more valuable. Like if right now they absorb like 1 hit, right? Well, if they absorb 2 hits, that means they're twice as good. And if you cast something more powerful like Mist Form or something absurd like that, then they would be very survivable and take quite a bit of time to kill. And you can even do things like, I believe there's a spell to berserk large quantities of units, and you can buff them up in a variety of ways in the late game, which can make them kind of handy. Still, it's not as handy as buffing up hundreds and hundreds of good units, like maybe Bandar Swordsmen, but it's still, they're still only 5 gold each, basically. And, oh yeah, and 1 resource is also handy in 3 recruitment points, so you can get a lot of them when it's a lot more challenging to do that now in Dominions 5, where you have to have the resources, you have to have the recruitment points, and you have to have the gold in order to get more elite units like these guys. That would be 19 gold each, right? Or even Atavi Infantry, which are a more realistic massable unit, because these are, they're only 7 gold, right? Actually, these are almost always a better choice, because you could still get like 160 of these guys without too much trouble, and they have enough damage, right, on their main melee attack that they actually could kill other like regular infantry, right? Even if they're fairly crappy stats overall. Okay, so let's look at their mages now that we've covered all the infantry and the commanders. So, oh wait, now that I say that, there's one more commander. The Guyaka General that you're going to use quite a bit, right? 80 leadership, 40 magic leadership. This is, this is particularly handy because, you need someone to lead your sacreds. This is the guy to do it, right? Priest 1, so you can bless the sacreds. This is one of your like sacred units itself, so it's going to be fairly tough once it receives your bless if you picked a good bless. And you can just stay behind the lines and lead these guys, like 40 of these guys around. But these guys are actually, when you buff them up, these are very good units actually, like more than you might think. Like, I don't know I guess I'll have to show it off in game. It's hard to really describe how good these guys actually become with a little bit of a buff. But yeah, those guys are your primary like lead people around dudes, because your army will revolve around your sacreds, and these are your research mages, the yogi. These are super efficient. These are some of the most efficient possible research mages in the game, and that's because 1 magic path is very cheap, and then making a unit sacred increases the price by 50%, right? However, it also reduces the upkeep by 50%. So over the course of 10 turns after that, this unit will be cheaper to have, right, long term, which means that versus non-sacred one-path mages, as you get into the mid-game, you're going to be paying a lot less upkeep than other people will be, and that's going to help you quite a bit. Similar things are true for your more powerful mages, the gurus. They are also only sacred, right? One path in priest, right, is pretty expensive, relatively speaking. You pay a lot for it in gold cost. So this nation has these two mages. Like, these guys are pretty expensive, but these two mages are very cost effective for what you get. All right. They have a pretty weak chassis, a lot weaker than most humans, and weaker than you're going to see almost anywhere else. They can't bless themselves, which is a bit of a disadvantage, but these guys are really, really cost effective. Okay, so now we get into your mage versions of your sacred units, right? The semi-divine yakshas and stuff, and these guys are super good. These are like the classic early age, very powerful. That's what I'm looking for. Very powerful mage, high path mage, right? A lot of early age nations do get mages like this, so you're not going to be alone in this. But these guys are pretty great, in particular because they get astral pathing. So like, if you get astral as your 100% random, you're going to have Earth 3, Nature 1, and Astral, and you can become a Communion Master. And if you haven't, you should probably watch my video on communions, because Kaliasa is a big utilizer of communions in Dominions, and it can allow you to boost your Earth Magic quite high. So like, Earth Magic has a lot of really good stuff at like Earth 5, which you can actually get on these guys if you're very lucky, and get the 10% random as Earth and the 100% random as Earth. And Earth 5 has a lot of really good stuff, and Earth Magic has a lot of other like higher, like Earth 6, 7, 8 spells. And with communions, you can actually get these guys up to like Earth 7, Earth 8 pretty realistically, and cast really big Earth Magic. Earth Magic also has a lot of good scaling spells like Maws of Earth and Blade Wind. And so you're going to get access to all that stuff and be able to make good use of it with these guys. And in addition, of course, you've got the water and the nature. For the Earth Nature has some cross paths as well. So like Earth 3, Nature 2 is actually pretty solid also. These guys with a good bless can thug. They're not my favorite thugs ever, but they're pretty decent at it, really. Their hit points are kind of low, but having Awe is super powerful, and having Earth and Nature magic is super powerful. So like, if you take a bless that buffs their protection, right? Like, which is what I'm going to show off, and buffs their, basically just buffs their durability in some way you can't with items, and then you actually build them a helmet and a torso armor, right? So you build them armor. You're going to be able to use Earth Magic to then cast like summon Earth power, right? Pretty easily, and Nature Magic at just, I think, Enchantment 2 to cast personal regeneration, and they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. You can easily get like close to 20 protection, and you, also have Awe, and you would have, I think, how much do you get from Earth Magic? You already get 3 from Earth Magic here, so you'd get 4 from Earth Magic. And you'd have Reinvigoration, right? And 2 attacks, like baseline. And you can probably take out like 1 to 10 province defense with just this guy, right? And later on, you can cast Iron Skin, giving you 20 protection, and then you're just going to be an absolute monster. I mean, without any bless at all, I think you could probably thug with these guys if you just give them like a breastplate and helmet, and you cast Summon Earth Power, Iron Skin, Personal Regeneration, and wait into combat. You're going to be able to take out some provinces at least. And if you have access to Astral Magic, I think you could give them, I don't know if Body Ethereal is only 1 Astral. If it is, they could make themselves Ethereal as well, which is just super good. And the Yakshini are their counterparts, but with Water Major Magic, right? And they still get access to Astral, which means that they can be Communion Masters as well, allowing you to cast big water spells. Now, there's not as much cool stuff in water, to be honest, but there are a few neat things you can do. There's also some, creepy nature water crosspath spells like Bone Melter, which does exactly what it sounds like, and the units on the other end are not going to fare well. So these guys are both very good. The Yaksha are, I would say, better than the Yakshini overall, just because Earth Magic is a better big path to have than water. Water is useful, but you don't really need more than like 2 water magic to get a lot of the use out of water that you can. Of course, the Yakshini are going to be, I think, your only like really spammable evocation mages because they get Falling Frost, and the closest the earth magic will get is Blade Wind, which is going to get you more friendly fire probably, and it's not magic damage. So keep that in mind. All right, so that I think covers everything we need to cover about their unit line. Something I should I mention anything else in here? Let's see. They prefer heat skills too. That's going to be part of our Pretender discussion. So this is what I have lined up for Pretender right now. And I think this might be what I go with, although I'd like to show you some other options. So let me explain a few of these things. Turmoil 3 is taken primarily because I kind of like luck scales, and this nation has... what's the word for it? They have national summons that are quite good, right? So they have more uses for gems than other nations do, and you might want to have luck scales in order to get more gems to make greater use of their potential for gems, right? You don't need to take Turmoil in this nation. You could instead switch this around and get like Order 2 and Misfortune 2, and that would work out, and you could potentially like dunk one more scale somewhere else to get Order 3. Or maybe go down to Order 1 and Misfortune 1, so it's a little less overall, right? But personally, I prefer this route because you also are going to be fairly gold efficient with your units. You're not going to recruit a lot of... you're going to recruit a small number of elite sacreds, and your sacreds are actually pretty cost effective, and you're going to recruit mages that are, for the most part, pretty cost effective, so I'm not too concerned about it. And of course, some of the good national summons that you can get with gems are mages that are not going to cost you any upkeep. So in that way, it can kind of be worth an additional gold value to have luck scales. Now let's look at the bless that we're doing here. So, all right, you can't click into these. Stygian Flesh is kind of essential. All right, so there's pretty much two things that you can do that just instantly makes your sacreds fantastic, and that's Stygian Flesh at Death 5 or at Nature 6, I think it is. Bark Skin, right? Yeah, Bark Skin at Nature 6. So the reason those are good is because Stygian Flesh gives you 10 natural protection against all non-magical attacks, and Bark Skin gives you 10 natural protection against all attacks, including magical ones, but you get Fire Weakness 5, which is going to be really rough if you are fighting any nation with fire magic. So it's a pretty significant weakness, not going to lie. However, the fact that it isn't negated with by magical weapons can be kind of handy, as nations that don't have fire magic are not going to have any particular access to one of your weaknesses. And of course, you could potentially cast a variety of spells to give your units fire resistance. All right, but I do prefer Stygian Flesh, I think, partly because of the death mages that you get access to. I think they're kind of more convenient than some of the nature options in many cases, but not always. I'm going to show off some other options in a minute. So Blood Surge is just really handy because it's just a really good boost. It's a really good boost. 3 attack skill, 3 strength, 1 defense. It makes sacreds with multiple attacks a lot better. It's okay-ish for mages, as you get some reinvigoration sometimes, and the +1 defense skill is, not totally useless, right? So, and it's so cheap at just 4 points. I think it's the most dangerous bless you can get for only 4 points. So, that's why I like having Blood Surge in here. You also, do you get any I don't think you get any blood summons with Kaliasa, but you could use it to break into blood magic a little inefficiently and get some neat blood things. For example, you could use Blood Slaves to empower one of your Earth Mages up to Blood 2 and then start crafting Bloodstones to boost your Earth Pathing even higher. It wouldn't be unreasonable to give a mage, you could get a Earth 3 Mage with Astral. Give them Earth Boots and a Bloodstone, and that puts them up to Earth 5. In a decent communion, you're going to be able to get them up to Earth 8, which is pretty crazy. And then you can summon Earth Power to Earth 9. So you can boost a mage very high and cast some really powerful spells that way. The other thing about this particular setup is that it allows me to still get 1 magic scale. This is a nation that really likes magic scales because it has exactly the thing that you can leverage when you have magic scales, which is very cost-effective mages, right, that you can recruit a lot of. Okay, so I want to one second. I want to show you some other options, however. And so I went through a couple different bless ideas. So one was to get the Great White Bull, right, and expand with it. Now, one flaw I found in this plan, which was something I hadn't tested yet in Dominions 5, probably should have done it earlier, which is that I got the Great White Bull killed, and when your god is dead in Dominions 5, because the god has to be incarnate, right, to gain the bless effect, you lose your bless effect. I thought it would just be after your god wakes up, but no, you lose it when your god dies. So expanding with a god that you have a bless for is very good, but very risky. You have to be quite careful about doing it. Fortunately, you don't lose your bless from the magic path loss that happens when a god dies. So if you do get them killed, just focus on resummoning them before you get into any major fights. But although other nations can probably survive this, like, I would consider dangerously expanding as, like, Middle Pangea with a god that has a bless, right? Because they could just recruit more Satyr Revelers and expand with those. As Kaliasa, if your god dies, you will not be able to expand anymore, pretty much, because your other units are garbage, and you won't be able to recruit very many of them anyway, and your Sacreds won't be able to kill anything. So be very careful if you go this route to not get your god killed. Make sure you don't expand into anything really dangerous. It's still nice to have a god that can move around as opposed to an immobile, which are the other options I mostly looked into. So bear that in mind. And you can carefully expand with this god, and as long as you don't get them killed, this is a pretty good option. I've taken Fortitude and Barkskin, so this generally just makes your units really resistant to the damage that they can't avoid, making them a lot more survivable, and they're already naturally pretty damaging and hard to hit. In particular, raising their base protection and giving them resistance to blunt, piercing, and slashing is to make them more resistant to arrows, right? All these blesses are pretty much revolving around making them not die to archers, right? Of course, the increasing protection route, actually both of these buffs, has the benefit of not only making them resistant to archers, but making them more resistant in general, which is really what you want, right? Because they'll be resistant to their weakness now, but they're also even more resistant against their strength, which is melee combat, right? And an air shield, on the other hand, while not a bad idea, only makes you resistant to ranged attacks, of course, right? That said, here's an example with Air Shield. So I took Air Shield and Stygian Flesh. So this makes them really immune to arrows, right? Like, the main thing here is that if you do take Air Shield, people can't counter it with Flaming Arrows. Like, think about this. Flaming Arrows are a magic weapon, so they go through Stygian Flesh. Flaming Arrows deal fire damage, so they will set your units on fire and kill them in one hit every single time if you're using Barkskin. But Air Shield will block 80% of arrows no matter what. So if you are fighting an enemy army and they have one of the earliest, easiest counters to your Bless, which is Flaming Arrows, your units are still going to be effective against Flaming Arrows because they're just not going to get hit with those arrows. And I threw in a Blood Bless because, again, I could squeeze in 4 more points with this Pretender, and it's a very murderous 4-point bless, and I couldn't get anything more expensive than this in there. If I could get something more expensive, I suppose I might want flaming weapons, right? Having magic weapons would be nice. And another thing I will say is that you can consider taking 2 points of drain to get 4 points of astral magic. And what you would do with that is put 2 points into, what's it called? Magic command, right? So that your sacred units can command more magical units. Now, 20 more magical leadership will actually make a huge difference in your leadership of your armies over the course of the game, actually. And in particular, it'll allow your prophet to lead magic units. So you could make a commander without magic command, your prophet at the beginning of the game to let you lead a stronger early expansion force. Then the other 2 points I would probably put into magic weapons. Now the reason for that, of course, is because then you have a counter to any ethereal units, any units using Stygian Flesh, and so on. It could give you an edge versus another nation that has used a similar bless to this, right? And it's very cheap at only 2 astral points. But a little bit awkward for most people to splash for, especially since often the other 2 points of astral that you would have would be kind of useless, but not for Kaliasa. So that's what I would consider as well. I kind of like this. The disadvantage to this bless, by the way, is that you're taking an immobile pretender. I don't know if I've made this clear enough in some of my other videos, but an immobile pretender is always a disadvantage, right? Being able to move your pretender to someplace so that you can cap a province is very useful, right? Not cap a province, what am I saying? Capture a throne. Capture a throne, right? Because you need to capture thrones to win the game, and capturing a couple thrones simultaneously when people don't expect it is very powerful. I will say that Kaliasa at, well, it's only at Conjuration 9, but they do eventually get Priest 4s as a summonable unit, which can help alleviate some of that. Also, since you've taken air magic on the Demi-Lich here, you can teleport using Cloud Trapeze to a province, which can alleviate some of those problems later on. But of course, he can't go around site searching, and he can't really engage in combat normally. On the other hand, well, actually, before I do that on the other hand argument, let's look at the Monolith, which is the other option, right? This is only one scale less, right, than the Demi-Lich. However, I've squeezed in the astral magic, and we've gone the earth and nature route instead with fortitude and barkskin. So this is also very good, right? This is a little bit less risky than the Great White Bull, but at the same time, well, maybe I shouldn't say more challenging. I guess the Great White Bull is actually more challenging for once, right? Like having that early expander, because you have to be careful not to lose it or you could screw up your whole game. That would be pretty challenging, right? But having an extra expansion party in the early game and having a mobile pretender that can site search and participate in battle if you're careful is very good, of course. Whereas the Monolith just sits in your capital and researches and gives you a slightly better version of the same bless, right? So this is another way you can go if you wanted to do that arcane route without going on the Demi-Lich, right? Now, what I've got here is the Master Lich. Hold on. Why is this? Oh, it's because I've got the wrong things queued up. All right, let's see. With these two blesses, right? So the Master Lich has the two particular advantages. One is that he's immortal, right? Which the Demi-Lich also is, but he can't really use his immortality since he can't really leave his home province very easily. But the Master Lich can walk around and leave his home province. He's got a decent amount of hit points and okay general combat stats, although with these magic paths, I wouldn't take him into combat. Melee combat, that is. And he's a pretty good mobile caster. He can go around site searching, he can go around blood hunting, he can engage the enemy army and duke it out with them. In particular, because you've gone blood magic on this guy, if you get a few blood slaves, you can make him a Sabbath Master, right? Which will boost your blood and death paths and allow him to spam a bunch of powerful death spells. Since you have access to really cheap communion slaves. Now, I will mention that the scales here are pretty bad. So you have to go either 2 growth or like 2 drain. Only 2 growth or 3 growth and 2 drain. And drain is super bad for this nation. Oh wait, you don't have to go these terrible scales. That's there's a little bug with this thing. I forgot. That's right. You actually get pretty good scales. There's a bug with this thing when you go to load up pretenders where it like sets the bless effects and scales to what you were looking at recently. That's one of the other options you had to go. Those terrible scales. I think the Monolith had to do that. So the nice thing here is that you get 1 magic point. This is a very light bless, but you get 1 magic point, which means that you're gonna research stuff a lot faster, and that's gonna help you out quite a bit. Compared to Drain, like the Drain and magic influence this nation quite a great deal, and it's hard to get some of those bigger blesses without going Drain, right? Particularly because growth and luck are so valuable, or if you don't do luck, growth and order are so valuable. Taking turmoil and not taking luck is pretty rough. So it puts you in a sticky situation, as it were. And so I kind of like this because Stygian Flesh is really all your sacreds need to be pretty good. If you run into people with magic weapons, you're going to have a sad time, right? So you're going to have to learn to deal with that. However, you do have some alternate options, right? Like, if you run into people who have magic weapons who don't have fire weapons, so if it's not flaming arrows that you're dealing with, then this bless is perfectly fine, right? I was saying that. Oh, because, sorry, it's not perfectly fine on its own, but you will, research spells like Mass Protection, which is not negated by magic weapons. It's countered by fire damage. And later on, you can cast spells like Iron Warriors, and then very later on, Army of Gold or Army of Lead, which will overwrite these bonuses, but make your units quite good in and of itself, and even like with Army of Gold, resistant to fire. So that's something to keep in mind. This is definitely a weaker option. Like, you have to be careful. Like, if you fight a nation that's a good candidate for flaming arrows, or if you fight a nation that has sacreds with magic weapons, you're gonna potentially run into some trouble. Of course, your sacreds will actually be okay against units that have magic weapons but are still melee, right? Because they need to make morale checks to hit you because you have awe, right? And if you start buffing your units as well with a variety of different spells, that can help negate that penalty. And Blood Search is quite handy, so you have a bit of an advantage there. I'm not sure this is necessarily the best route, though. You know, it's like, hard to say. It's hard to say. This is definitely a good option, however. So keep that in mind. It's just a little bit more limited in who you can fight effectively going into the mid-game, right? But still good at expansion. So I'm going to actually... I think I'm going to show off the Demi-Lich build, actually, because this is definitely the safest build. Your one weakness is people with better melee troops than you that have magic weapons, some of which do exist. You're going to have to deal with them using your magic, not just counting on your sacreds to deal with them. But everything else is going to be pretty handy for you. Flaming arrows is not going to counter you. That's a pretty big deal, not being countered by flaming arrows. I would have to say. And you're going to get a nice research boost from this guy, 35 magic. And although you couldn't fit in a magic scale point, at least you don't have any drain, right, with this build. So that's pretty nice. So let's see. One thing we are going to do is we're not going to make this guy a prophet like we normally would. He's going to actually just patrol the province, and the scout would normally go scout, but, you know, I like to just get him out of the way for these guide videos, so he's just going to patrol the province. And we're going to recruit a Guyaka general, because we need magic leadership in order to recruit our sacreds, right? And we're going to recruit the Yavanna. Now, you sometimes won't be able to recruit enough of these guys, right? There we go. To use up all your holy points, because it depends, right? If you spawn in a really good location, sometimes you will have enough resources and it won't be a problem. But because you have Sloth 3, sometimes you're not going to be able to max them out, so instead just get some Guyaka instead of just Yavannas. And, you know, they're almost as good, right? They don't have shields, so they're a little less durable, but you'd rather have one extra dude than have one more of your total dudes have a shield. Okay, so we're going to just end... Oh, wait, let's set up research and talk about it first. I like to get this out of the way in the beginning. So, the most important thing to you is Thaumaturgy 2. And, actually, no, it is Thaumaturgy 2. So, in Thaumaturgy 1, you've got Communion, Master, and Slave, which is very important to this nation. And, again, you could watch that Communion video I made, which was also using Kaliasa, if you want to know more about Communions and how they work. But, that's a very important spell to this nation. And then Mind Burn is also very handy, because a lot of your mages can cast Mind Burn. In particular, your what are they? Not Yogini. They're gurus. Your gurus can just cast Mind Burn, and they're a pretty easy to recruit mage. You can have a fairly large number of gurus, and they can just cast Mind Burn. And then the next thing you're going to want is Conjuration 4. So that gets you Light of the Northern Star, which boosts the magic pathing of all astral mages on the battlefield. So what you would do then is you would get a guru, and you would put him in a communion with 2 yogis, right? And so now that would boost his astral magic to 3. And then he would cast Light of the Northern Star, boosting the astral magic of all mages on the battlefield by 1. So let's assume you have like 20 yogis on the battlefield, because these guys are really cheap. I mean, it's 55 gold. You pay almost that much for your sacreds, right? Very cheap. So you would have these guys on the battlefield, and they would now have Astral 2, which means they can cast Mind Burn. Now let's go and look at what Mind Burn does. So its magic resistance negates 12 armor negating damage. So if they don't pass the magic check, most human-sized units will be one-shot by this spell, right? And it's got 100% accuracy, and it's 100 range. So it'll go all the way across the battlefield, and it'll kill someone, right? With every single cast, assuming they pass the magic resist check. Now, something I should mention here is that this also means that there's one other decent option with an Astral Bless, right? You could go into Astral Magic, and you could spend 4 points, and you could get, I forget what it's called, like Arcane Finesse might be the one. It's the one that gives you +1 to penetrate magic defenses or magic to beat magic resistance. And +1 is actually quite good in terms of like the odds, how many penetrations you get, how many hits you get essentially out of like 20 castings of the spell are going to go way up if you have a +1 there, right? So definitely worth it. And the other thing you can do is, of course, have like two, let's see, you can have like 2 yogis as communion slaves, or 3 yogis as communion slaves, even, and like 2 gurus as masters, and or 4 would be 4 slaves and 2 masters, right? And that could easily get you to Astral 4. And then after one of these guys casts Light of the Northern Star, they're at equivalent Astral 5, right? Which is very good. And you could even cast Power of the Spheres as well and go to Astral 6. I don't know if it's worth it because Power of the Spheres uses up 100 fatigue, right? It costs 100 fatigue, but it would be pretty easy to cast when you're already at equivalent Astral 5. It wouldn't cost that much fatigue. And then you can start casting Mind Burn. Now, Mind Burn gets better with your magic pathing, and your odds of beating magic resistance gets better with your magic pathing. So when you're at equivalent of Astral 6, you're going to be casting very dangerous Mind Burns, right? And they're going to do a lot more damage. This could be particularly useful if you're going up against elite units, like if you know the enemy army has a lot of sacreds, if you're fighting giants like Niflheim, then having a better chance to beat magic resistance and doing more damage when you beat it is going to be more of an advantage to you. Okay, so that's where we're going Thaumaturgy 2, and then we're going up to Conjuration 4. After that, we're going to get Alteration 3, and that's mostly because of spells like Iron Skin is at 3, right? Iron Skin, right? Spells like Stone Skin and Iron Skin, primarily, right? I don't think there's anything else too useful in here. Being able to cast Protection, which is Bark Skin, except it's in Area 1, is okay. And it gets us onto some other spells we're going to want. Like, we want Curse of Stones eventually. We want Maws of the Earth up here eventually. We want Iron Warriors eventually. We want Bone Melter. We want a lot of stuff in here, really. Phantasmal Army, we want that because you can summon Air Mages later on and put them in communions. We want Wooden Warriors because this is like the Area of Effect 5 is pretty solid for the overall cost of this spell, and it gives people bark skin, which could be good versus, say, an opponent who has magic weapons but not flaming arrows, right? Potentially, with this nation, you could even use bark skin with this bless because you have air shield, right? You could just say, well, 1 in 5 times I'm going to get hit with the flaming arrow and die. Maybe it's worth it to you in a certain case, right? And Mass Protection, much later on, is the battlefield-wide version of Barkskin. Marble Warriors, however, is actually a little bit more awesome, in my opinion. This gives you Stone Skin, which gives you Cold Weakness, I believe. Yeah, Cold Weakness and 15 base protection in an area of effect 25. So it costs Earth Gems, but you could have a couple Earth Mages casting it and hit most of your army with it pretty easily due to the large area of effect. Wave Warriors, similarly good. This gives you like blunt slashing, piercing resistant, right? And reduced affliction gain. There's a strength and movement speed penalty, but it's probably worth it for the increased durability. There's a lot of good stuff in High Alteration, right? And I'd probably be casting spells like that. It depends a little bit on the enemies you're facing. Obviously, don't cast it versus Niflheim because they're all about cold magic, right? Cast Barkskin instead because they don't have any fire magic. They're weak to fire magic themselves. Okay, so after you get those, let's see, you probably want like Construction 4 and then Evocation maybe 5, actually, because you get access to Air Mages, and what you can do is you can cast Storm, and since you actually do have good archers, but let's see, you can cast Storm, let me clarify, you can cast Storm against people who have flaming arrows, right? Because you don't have flaming arrows, but you do have good archers. And with the air shield bless, actually firing into your own units, like when there's a mass of units all fighting each other, and you fire arrows like all over that area, your units are going to take less damage than your opponent's units that don't have air shield, right? From friendly fire, right? Whereas usually it's still worth it, but friendly fire is a big problem, of course. So you wouldn't want to cast Storm because Storm destroys projectiles, not all of them, but some of them when archers fire. But if your opponent has flaming arrows, even letting in 1 in 5 through might be not a great deal for you, especially since you've got Stygian Flesh, and they're just going to ignore all of your protection when they get through and pretty much kill you. So you could cast Storm, and then you could also cast a spell like Mass Protection or Wooden Warriors a bunch, right? And since you now are going to be hit by arrows almost never at all, having 5 fire weakness is not going to be such a big deal unless your opponents are throwing fireballs around. Another thing is that Storm... Actually, I'm wondering if I'm getting this right now because I haven't checked in a long time, but I'm pretty sure Storm reduces the accuracy of all units in the Storm, which means that enemy mages are going to miss a lot more. Well, it's not a problem for you, though, because you're using 100 precision astral spells that are always going to hit their targets, right? So their fireballs are going to be more likely to be friendly fire, right? And your spells are going to work just as usual. So casting Storm in a variety of circumstances is going to be beneficial to you. Just keep in mind that penalizing archers isn't going to be in your favor unless they're shooting flaming arrows, probably. At least not with this bless. If you don't have air shield, I think it's still probably a great idea. So yeah, keep that in mind. Okay, so I think that covers magic for the most part. Like, there's probably more we could go into. There's national summons, so you probably want to go... Oh, where is it? You probably want to at least get Conjuration 6 for Summon Kinara, because this is your first air mage, and I think the Devata is also an air mage. I know you get the Vala and Rudra are pretty good at 9 Conjuration, so you might want to get there eventually, but it's a lower priority than some other things. Like, I might go up Thaumaturgy. Actually, yeah, there is more to talk about here. Let's see. Where is Soul Slay? So this is like Mind Burn on steroids, right? Instead of dealing high damage to someone, it instantly kills them. All right. Like, there's not that much more to talk about. It's Mind Burn that instantly kills people up here at Thaumaturgy 5. So you might very well want to say, like, forget Evocation, I just want to cast Soul Slay a lot, right? Now, it's 3-pathing, right? So instead... what you would do for Soul Slay spam is you would recruit a ton of gurus, right? So let's say you have 20 gurus, and then you have, like, I don't know, 4 yogis, and you put the 4 yogis in a communion, and they go and are just, you know, batteries for your communion masters, which are going to cast some big buffing spells like Light of the Northern Star, which is going to make all of your gurus Astral 3, and now all 20 of your gurus can cast Soul Slay. And you know, compared to some battlefield magics that hit like 10 squares of units, right, which could have 3 units per square, it doesn't sound that great, but straight up just murdering 20 units per turn is actually very good on the overall. Now, of course, you have to beat a magic resistance check, and people can cast spells like anti-magic to help protect themselves from such spells. However, it's still very good, especially if you're dealing with elite units, right? If you're dealing with nations like Niflheim, trying to insta-kill a Nifl giant like 5 times before it eventually works is pretty worthwhile when you do instantly kill one. And it can also be very good against units like Nifl Jarls that are decked out as super combatants. Now, they might have a huge magic resistance roll, so that they can only be affected on a critical roll, right? By a spell that is negated by magic resistance. However, if you try and Soul Slay even some of the most powerful units in the game 20 times per turn, in 2 or 3 turns, they're eventually going to get crit and die instantly, right? So it's a very powerful spell to have in your toolbox. There's a few other spells like it. I believe Bone Melter works a similar way, which is also in Thaumaturgy? No, I think it's in Alteration, right? Bone Melter. Yep. This is actually... Oh, it's about equally easy to access. Some different mages can cast it with different magic pathing, but, you know... oh, it's Area of Effect 1. That's right. Bone Melter is better. Oh, excuse me. Bone Melter is better because Bone Melter will kill, like, up to 3 units. Or if the units are size 1, you could kill up to 6 units, right? So you could kill a couple units in a single turn with Bone Melter. It's... Well, not perfect accuracy, though, so you could hit your own units with it. It's also fatigue cost. It's only 20. It's very low, actually, so it's a pretty easy spell to spam, really. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. Now let's get into expansion. So the really neat thing about expansion is that our expansion force should just be recruited in every 1 turns, right? So every turn you get an expansion force. So we're gonna have this guy go blessing, 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 keep casting spells, which is gonna make him do nothing useful except it also makes people stand behind troops. And we'll have say, oh wait, no, hold an attack closest. All right, so these guys are gonna have a tough time expanding against any units at all. Right? So I actually like to leave this guy sitting around until later on when I have more resources and I can recruit some spare units and throw them on with this guy, or I combine him with one of these sacred expansion forces to expand somewhere super dangerous, like a throne province, right? But I wouldn't want to go there immediately, right? So instead, let's see, these are actually all kind of gnarly to deal with. We'll go to the heavy cavalry, I think, and we'll steal like a few of these Macarta and put them on this guy. And here's a neat trick. So heavy cavalry are mostly dangerous because they have a lance charge. It only works once per battle though. So we put the Macarta out front. Let's get even a few more of these Macarta archers. And so the cavalry are going to charge the Macarta and kill them all. And hopefully they're going to hit them with lance charges. And so now we don't have to worry about our sacreds getting one shot by these lance charges, right? And so we should be able to win. The other thing is that cavalry are fast, and they might get to us before we're done blessing, which we also really don't want to happen. So let's see here. I think we can't quite get another one of those in. All right, so we're just going to keep recruiting this, and every turn we'll get an expansion force like this, and these guys should be able to expand against most provinces. We got a pretty rough start here, relatively speaking, but we still should be able to deal with it pretty easily. Okay, so let's see. It did work. Okay, so let's check this out. It's a good little strategy to show off here, and Kaliasa can do it particularly well. So don't worry too much about cavalry nations because you have their weakness, which is little shitty units you can let suicide into cavalry. Yep, and you'll kill your way through these guys without too much trouble. Only one dude takes... Oh, you take a little bit of damage here, but you don't lose any sacreds, so that's pretty cool. Okay, and we're gonna move our way onward. Now, Barbarians, I think, do qualify, actually, as a dangerous unit. Let's do a little... So, quick note here. You can hold... I forget which it is. It's either Control or Shift, and press a number, and then it'll copy orders, right? Like that. And so you can click the number again and paste the orders, sort of in-game. And so you can have up to, like, 10 different order sets copied. And you can do it for regular units as well, but it's a little less useful. I forget which it is, and so what I actually do is I just press each one. And so honestly, I have no idea. I have no idea if it's Control or if it's Shift. I should actually test it sometime and stop having to press both, but I've been doing it for at least like 3 years now, so it's a hard habit to break, I guess. We're going to try the Undead. They shouldn't be too bad because we at least have some protection, but those are going to be a lot more dangerous than anything else we've fought before. We won't get any of our bless effects from these guys. That's actually super annoying. Oh, geez. Do I want to just... Actually, you know what I'm going to do? This is probably smarter. We're going to have these guys... I think these guys can do it. You know what? I think these guys can do it. We're going to have these guys risk it on Barbarians, and these guys are going to risk it on Undead. And there's a good chance that either one of these attacks might not work. But there's also a good chance that they will work, so we'll see. And we can probably stop recruiting those guys and recruit just not quite. Almost there. One more province and we'll be able to do that. Recruit just our more elite sacreds. Dang it. Well, they've softened them up for our next sacred expansion force. Alright, we lost one of our Guyakas, but we killed all those guys, and... Damn it! Oh, man. Alright, let's see here. So we've got an extra commander. How obnoxious. Okay, so hold an attack closest. Who are we gonna go after, do you think? I'm thinking we go after the Undead, and we're gonna have this guy actually Wind of Memories. We're gonna have him span Wind of Memories. Unfortunately, so something to note actually in Dominions 5. Maybe I should make a video on this separately. So your like undead banishment spells change based on your priest, not your priest level, your bless type actually, like the pathing of your pretender. And so Wind of Memories, I think it's because of death pathing, and it's really shit. That's a good way to put it. It's really fucking shit. There is a certain pathing, I forget which one it is, but there's one of them like instantly kills them. It's like it gives you like AoE Soul Slay versus Undead. It's crazy good. But you know, this is better than nothing. And can this guy handle 3? Well, actually, we'll put these under him, and then just put them up in the front as more fodder. And we're gonna go all in on this stupid province. This guy. Never healing wound. Well, we'll make him patrol the province. Maybe I should have made a prophet by now, but I actually like to make my prophet one of our more elite mages. It's nice to have a powerful unit as your prophet. Don't forget to put defense PD on your provinces either. I've been remiss in that, but that's a huge mistake. Don't do it. Let's see. So this should be good, and we're recruiting another army. Okay. Alright, Long Dead were pretty rough. They killed some of our chaff, but that's okay. And these, look, oh wow, look, I'm gonna go over another, let's watch this video. I've been making a mistake here in that I haven't actually covered in detail what's so great about your sacreds once they get blessed, right? So let's wait until these guys slap some units around, right? So alright, they've killed a couple units and we can look at these guys. Okay, so this guy's got a never healing wound, so he's got less HP than normal, but let's ignore that for the moment. So with invulnerability 10, your natural protection versus mundane attacks is 10, so that's pretty great. With all 1, units have to make a morale check to attack you. So this has weaknesses. Undead ignore it for one. Berserk units also ignore it, but other units do not. Ranged units also ignore it, of course, because they're not attacking you in melee combat. It's only for melee combat. Air shield 80, meaning 80% chance of negating any ranged attack, right? Ranged projectile attack, right, specifically. So it's not going to negate breath weapons, obviously. Reinvigoration 1 we've got from this blood surge, right? And we only have 2 encumbrance, so you're not really... You get 1 reinvigoration as well from just being a person in Dominions 5. So you are going to just have no fatigue the whole battle long with these guys. But overall, this makes your combat stats really good. Like, kick is 18 damage now, spear is 21 damage, and this isn't even one of our more elite guys. Look at this guy, 26 and 18, and look, his combat stat block is just fantastic. 16 defense, 16 attack, 18 strength. This is amazing. He's getting +1 from experience to a couple things, but this is just super, super good. He's not going to take a lot of damage, and he's going to kill people really fast because he has 2 attacks. And so let's play this and watch it in action. Alright, we'll speed it up. This is too slow. And so you see these guys lighting up? That's the awe. Each time they light up, that means that these guys got protected from an attack by awe. The other thing is that awe, part of the reason it's so good is it makes defense skill really good. So he's not getting any penalty from harassed right now, but each time that a unit is attacked, they get a -2 penalty to their defense, right? For when successive attacks are made, right? So the first time someone attacks you in a sort of invisible round, you have defense skill 16, right? And then the next time someone attacks you, you have defense skill 14, and so on. And since awe prevents attacks from starting, it means that you're going to get attacked fewer times, and when you do get attacked, there's a good chance you'll still have your maximum defense skill, so that's very good. You know, we took some decent amount of damage, but we were able to kill through all these guys because our sacreds actually have fairly high HP, and we're protecting them quite a bit from damage with all these buffs. Okay, so we'll transfer the chaff over to these guys, and we're going to have this guy. Emissa is going to go back to the capital. So we're going to do something. We're going to recruit 1 army without a leader, and we're going to get a guru for some extra research since we've got this extra guy to give units to. And what we're going to do is we've got another tough province here to deal with, right? So we're going to send 2 of our sacred groups to attack these barbarians. Something to keep in mind is that actually a lot of the time, one of these groups would be able to expand by itself and like take provinces, right? Like this one over here has gone through 1, 2, 3 provinces by itself, right? And we've lost 1 guy and we're still killing people, no problem, right? So it's just kind of unusual that we're having to team up all our units the way we are. You'd normally expand, or maybe not normally, but many times when you start a game, you would expand a lot faster than this. This isn't one of those times because we've just gotten kind of unlucky in what units we've had to face, and we've had to face units that are kind of strong versus our units. We're gonna have similar problems with there's some other units I've seen in Dominions 5, like these guys. Bone Tribe, right? These guys are going to obliterate your sacreds. Taking this province will be very difficult. It's a throne province, and it's not super close to us. I mean, it's 2 away, but yeah, fortunately, we don't have to be too fussed about taking it immediately, and because it's so scary, other people won't take it soon either. But these guys can be a normal province. If we had those guys were right there, we'd have to just leave that for a long time until we could send like a bunch of regular units at it. Okay, so let's end turn. Alright, so that battle went pretty okay. That's to be expected. Lion Tribe are really weak, especially they have a lot of archers, and they spend a lot of time like throwing spears at you. So since we have an air shield blessed, they're going to be like completely non-effective against us. So as you can see, we lost 3 of our sacreds here, right? Expanding against barbarians, and that's because barbarians have good morale, and when they do get an attack through, it's going to like one-shot your sacred because they're going to do like 20-something damage, and they also have a lot of like blunt weapons, right? So if they get a blunt weapon to the head, it deals double damage. So it's average 20, so it's going to deal like maybe up to 30 damage to you on a good roll, and your dude just dies. And there also were quite a few of them, so it's very unfortunate. So we're actually going to make an unusually elite expansion force here. I'm just going to send this guy back to the capital, and we're going to have this guy move on. We're going to attack here. So I want to attack here. The reason I want to attack this province over this one is not because it's weaker, although it probably is. It could be deceptive, right? When there's only like 10 units in a province, there could be a mage in here. So this could actually be super dangerous instead of safer. But more importantly, it's a farmland, which is high income, and you want to expand into high income provinces at the beginning of the game pretty badly. So up here is highlands, low income, high resources, hinders movement. Okay, so not so useful, right? This would be a really good place to build a fort, probably, and this could be a good place to build a fort too, actually, just because of the population, right? Okay, so over here, we should have an expansion force. Now, I'm not 100% certain that we can handle these Jade units, the Amazon and Jade Maidens. How good they are, it can kind of vary a lot because they have like I think they're gonna have a Crystal Sorceress, which is really dangerous, but potentially we can just go through them really easily, or our units are all gonna die. So we'll see. They also have cavalry units with the lizard riders, right, which is not good. How's this guy doing? Heroic toughness. Increased number of hit points. Oh, sweet. I don't know if we're gonna be able to do anything with it, but maybe we could give him some items later and send him into a province suicidally and take some stuff out, right? If nothing else, he won't be dying to stray arrows too easily. Alright, so this was into that province. So this guy probably won't be able to expand much more because he's only got 3 Yavanas left. And this was into that heavy cavalry province. It was really just as shit as it looked, and we only lost Makarta archers that were out front as a suicide shield. Cool. And the Jade Maidens indeed had a Crystal Sorceress and a Jade Priestess, and they fucked us up. Alright. We killed a good chunk of them, though, including all of their Jade Maidens, which is good. So our next expansion force will probably succeed. So we'll just keep this shit up. We didn't lose 100% of our units, so it's going to be an unusually strong expansion force because some of them are treated here. Fine, whatever. Let's just roll at. Let's go at this again. Now we've recruited a couple yogis to get our research going, but now we need to start recruiting Guyaka generals again because we've run out of spare ones from failed expansion forces. Fortunately, we can also change over to Yavanna only. Actually, I probably could have done this like 2 turns ago, I think. So, whoops, that's a mistake on my part. Now I need to start. Let's see. So we're fall in the year 0. So this is a good time to think about beginning building forts. Probably I should have looked at this last turn. Late summer would be a good time, right? Approximately. So let's see. Right here is pretty low resources, but I'm not sure it matters too much for us. So we're gonna recruit a dude here. This is an okay place to build a fort. If nothing else, we can get mages from it. This is a high resource province nearby, at least. So if we capture these provinces and upgrade our fort to a castle, we should be okay. This guy's got good stuff still, so we're going to expand over there. And so the reason I'm recruiting an indie commander, by the way, this is so he can build the fort. That's why I'm talking about fort stuff, to be clear. This is not a great, there's no great spots around here. What about, these are all pretty terrible. I want at least 8,000 population, right? At least 8,000 population. This could be okay. It's like this or this one, right? 15, 15, 19. This is a good spot then. I'll do it here. I'll recruit a dude there. And let's see. Oh, my dude's retreated. Oh no. Oh no, they're all split up. Oh, that's fucking terrible. Alright, alright. We're just gonna send them all the way back to the capital. And let's see, we'll recruit. We're gonna skip one after this turn. Okay, so end turn. If you hear that like tap of my keyboard before I end the turn, it's me hitting J. J goes to the next available. How annoying! Next available unit that has not done something, right? And so like right now, like this guy, right? He's waiting orders. Any unit that's waiting orders to look for. I got a hero, so he's just gonna do research. I actually kind of like making this person into a prophet. Because they have high leadership skills, but maybe it's not the best combo actually. Yeah, only 25 magical leadership. I'd like to have more. Okay, so this guy's here. This guy's over here. So this guy conquered the Jade province. Something to look at, right? So Jade sorceresses, not very useful for this nation actually, but for a lot of nations, this can give you very desirable magic diversity. Right, so we're gonna actually ignore it because it's similar pathing to what we've got, but as other nations, you might want to pay attention to that. So we're gonna start constructing a palisades here, and this guy is gonna attack back into here to get rid of these stupid sea dogs, and this guy is going to get ready to go. Hold and attack closest enemy. All right, so we're actually going to, let's see, we're gonna actually wait on more units, and we're going to go in there. Oh, we can start recruiting our elite mages now too, probably, and afford it. Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna recruit a bunch of yakshas now. So we're gonna go in there and take this throne province because we need to secure the rest. It's the last place in our cap circle that we haven't secured yet, so that's gonna be good. And we lost this province, which is where we were gonna build another fort, so that's unfortunate. This guy's moving in here. All right. This dude is just going to sit here for the moment. Okay, and turn. Alright, our forces were beaten by the Sea Dogs. Really? How in the heck? Did I, like, really screw up my battle lines? How'd this happen? Alright, let's put it in fast forward. So, things not to do. I guess my guys weren't in a line formation. That's bad. And the Water Elemental is just going to slip by and... ah, frick. Alright, so Water Elementals are mindless, so he ignores... he ignores my... whatchamacallit, awe, because he's mindless and he has 50 morale, right? And it's a morale check at like 10. And he has, 1, 2, 3, 4, 18 damage attacks. So in about 2 attacks, he's going to kill my unit on average. Yeah, not good. Not good at all. That was because of their mage summoning that. Ouch. Ouch, indeed. Okay. So we're just going to give everything to this guy, though, over here. And he's going to head on into the throne province. Make sure to do line formation. That was part of my mistake. And the other attack, well, my mistake was not doing line formation because line formation is smart. But to a certain extent, it couldn't really have been avoided because I didn't really expect a water elemental. Maybe I should have. I probably could have. Well, even then, it could have potentially attacked my main body of sacreds and not snuck past my commander. And although I would have lost a lot of units, I think I would have won overall. Okay, so, a huge Jotun Axeman is seen towering over the army here. That does not bode well. It implies there could be some other spooky units in this army. But, yeah, so I'm going to attack into the Icarid. Ichids? I think it's Ichids. We're going to attack into those guys. These guys are pretty dangerous, relatively speaking, but I probably will be able to take them on. And if there's something weird in this army, that has a much better chance of killing my army than just decent infantry do. Okay, so... we're in early winter, I'm running out of time. I would have liked to capture more of these provinces. This random event really screwed us up. Okay. So let's get to the next turn here. All right, cool. So this went fine. Lost to Guyaka, but that's fine. They're not nearly as good anyway. Wolf tribe. All right, we killed them. Holy shit, there was a 105 wolf tribe, and we lost one dude. Not bad. All right, cool. I like that. It's the Throne of Pestilence. So this would reduce the growth scales we paid so dearly to get by 1 if we took it. So we're gonna fuck off. This is like a total waste of resources, and we're gonna try and take this province, and we're gonna send these guys into this province. So we've got 11 sacreds and. Or was it 10? 10 sacreds in this army, so I can probably handle any weirdness. This army is probably not, or this province is probably not weird, so we can take it no problem. We're still building palisades there, which is fine. Okay, so let's see. I'm actually going to wait for an extra turn of sacreds and then go over here and kill these sea dogs. All right. Oh, we got a random event. Oh, you know what? Yeah, let's attack closest and cast spells. What is he, a priest 2? How unfortunate. It's not that useful. All right, we'll have him move over there, actually, and we're going to have this guy move over here. We're going to set his army up, hold and attack closest. With all those extra free chaff we got from a different random event, maybe we can balance things out. Okay, we're in winter. Okay. Year 0 is almost over. Alright, yeah, there was weird stuff. Azure Mage, so this is spooky. I bet he summoned a water elemental, just like screwed me over earlier, right? Let's speed this along. He cast quickness on some of his units. Yeah, that's not good. No water elemental though, huh? Maybe he doesn't have any gems. Oh, he had gems. He just didn't do it. Alright, well, foolish enemy AI could have killed more of my dudes probably if it had done that. But, yeah, that did make it a lot more dangerous than it would have been otherwise. And we're done there. We're done here. So these guys, Amazons, I'm suspicious of this province as well. So we're going to actually... Well, no, we're not going to combine forces. Fuck it. If we spread them out anyways, one of these is probably going to succeed, and I'll have a new province either way. We'll attack into here, and we'll attack into here, and this is going to be the last turn of this guide, I think. All right, let's see how this goes. Okay. Something else to mention, I think is a mistake on my part. I probably could have been building another fort somewhere else. Ah, yes, the Garnet Sorceress, super bad. Griffin Rider, super dangerous. But we killed them all. Let's take a look at this fight, actually. What was I going to say? I could have started building a province, or palisades somewhere else, since building a palisades where I was trying to build one did not work out, to get my 2 forts closer to on time. That might have been a good idea. Instead of waiting to retake the Sea Dog province and then build my palisades there. Okay, wasn't too bad out overall. Cool. Alright, so we've got that as well. And we captured this as well, and now we can have this spare dude we got start building a palisades. And this is year 1. So with this, we finished expansion phase, right? Now expansion phase isn't like a specific number of turns per se, but usually it's done about now. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 provinces, right? So I think this is actually the best I've done in any of my example expansion videos so far. I usually get like 14 instead of the standard 15 by the end of expansion. And I have to attribute it in large part to the nation, really. Most nations cannot recruit an expansion force every single turn. And like as you've seen here, your 1-turn expansion force can take out most independent provinces, right? Like these guys up here, 20 heavy infantry and militias and archers is probably actually like 30 of them. No problem for just 4 of your sacreds, right? No big deal at all. And then 2 turns of expansion force gives you enough leverage to take on much more dangerous and unusual indie provinces. So you're in a really great position to expand without an expansion pretender. With this kind of bless. And like keep in mind that like the majority of what lets you do this is just the Stygian flesh bless, right? because you can't see it on him, right? But just the part that gives you 10 invulnerability. The air shield and the blood surge are not super relevant to what lets you expand. So, and you have that alternative option of bark skin, which during expansion will do the exact same thing. In fact, it's a little bit better because there's a small chance that you'll run into units with magic weapons during expansion, right? So with any of the plus options I've shown you, as long as you take something like bark skin or Stygian flesh and then combine it with whatever you want, you're going to be able to expand close to this effectively, right? And there's a lot of other options that you could potentially explore. I think I've shown the best ones, but feel free to experiment, of course. I think Kaliasa is in a much better position in Dominions 5 than they were in Dominions 4. I don't know if that makes them good overall, really. But in Dominions 4, they were really considered like a really kind of an abysmal nation that you couldn't play because of how easy it was to counter them with spells like Flaming Arrows, which admittedly, or actually just regular archers, which admittedly still can be dangerous if you don't do a bless like this where you get both Air Shield and Stygian Flesh. But now I think you can get some more generally effective bless options more cheaply, like specifically that there was no way to boost your base protection by 10 in Dominions 4. And in Dominions 5, you have 2 methods of doing it, right? And it just makes a big difference. Something I should note is that I tried, I think in a different video, I said I thought that hard skin, I believe it is, in Earth, like the +5 protection Earth Plus, would stack with bark skin. Turns out that's not the case. And if I can figure out where I said that, I'll have to make a retraction, as it were. They don't actually stack. I'm very disappointed that they don't stack. I would have thought that they would, but they don't, unfortunately. So that's why I went Fortitude when I did the Earth Nature Bless. So I think that pretty much covers everything for the nation. As you get into mid-game, you're going to revolve around communions and boosting your weak mages to make them more powerful, and then casting spells like Mind Burn and Soul Slay. And so you'll have like a fairly elite army of Sacreds, and you just give them the edge by casting spells like that. Another thing of note would be that some battlefield-wide spells really benefit you a lot and don't like play to your strengths. That's the word I'm looking for here. So Curse of Stones, right? This causes enemy units to become more fatigued. Your units are not going to get fatigued at all because they have so low encumbrance, and you can give them +1 reinvigoration pretty easily. So this breaks non-magical armor. Very decent area of effect. Good versus any enemy that actually has decent armor, like Early Age Abyssia. So that can level the playing field quite a bit for you. Later on, what is there later on? I feel like I'm forgetting something. Ironbane, right? Battlefield-wide version of rusting, of the armor destruction, right? So spells like that can really help you a lot. In particular, like Curse of Stones is really handy. And so you can combine some different spells like that, some buffs for your troops, some penalties for the enemy troops. Curse of Stones along with Ironbane, it's a very handy combination. You can combine that with stuff like an Evocation. If you go up to Evocation 5, your nation is very good at spamming Stellar Cascade, which does fatigue damage. This is really good for dealing with units that you can't deal with in some other way, because it's got a magic resist check for only half damage instead of completely being negated. You can spam it really heavily versus units that say you don't think you can pass the magic resistance of very easily, instead of doing Mind Burn or Soul Slay. All right, so I think that does cover it. Don't forget that you can summon air units at Conjuration 6, and that is a very powerful ability to do, particularly because they have astral magic and they can be communioned up to very high air pathing, and air magic has a lot of handy tools in it for you. In particular, if other people have forgotten that, you can surprise them with air magic, and also even if they remember it, they may not know you've gotten access to those units yet, so it can be a good surprise attack weapon. Alright, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.